Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Chuck. You're listening to the ITXP, episode 6.3. The series of episodes take us back to season 1 of the ITXP, where I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just going on a whim, something that I wanted to get out there for the masses or for the few individuals that listen to this. As I've always stated in this episode and even previous episodes, this is not something where I anticipate large audiences to gather and listen to at any given point in time. This information is put out there on the ether so folks can consume it at their will. If you want to get into IT, hopefully the information that I give you is going to be insightful. So when I revisit season 1, I take a look at the first episode actually the second episode after the pilot, the introduction, and it talks about IT career paths and what paths are available to you to get into tech. Now, back then it was very much focused on the core IT professional, because I still feel that, and I've said this before, your grandma thinks you change printers or replace toner in a printer or ink in a printer, whatever, right? That's what they think. They don't know that you're probably the best software engineer out there building these applications that solve problems or maybe even save lives. To your grandmother or even to your mom, who may not know what the technology industry does, they probably just think that's what you do. You're like a Geek Squad person. Right. And obviously I'm being facetious here, but I can tell you that from my own personal experiences, apart from my father-in-law, who was a former retired CIO now, nobody else knows what the hell I do. And I just say, even my kids, I say now that I just babysit people because in essence, that's essentially what I do. But I digress. Working in technology is very vast. You can work for yourself and as an entrepreneur, you can work for a large organization, you can work for a mid-sized organization, you can work for a small organization. And the information I put forth for 5 years now is pretty sometimes in depth, sometimes very topical, I should say. And I want to provide as much information as I can so you can make a decision on how you want to pursue further. You don't have to listen to these shows in sequence. You can listen to them out of sequence. I am going to note that some of these episodes, especially early on, the audio was very, very raw, I should say. I've always tried to improve my recording abilities every year. Started off with an old Olympus recorder, handheld Olympus recorder in the beginning of those days. Moved up to Zoom handy recorder probably about 2 years ago. Improved my microphones, I think last year. And in this year, I improved my editing studio by moving away from Audacity and moving into Adobe. So it's something that I continuously try to improve upon. As I started out this season, I did tell you that I probably felt like I was at my limit in terms of how much more information I can provide. But as the new world is facing us and there are new opportunities out there, I think it's time to continue this and rehash some of my earlier thoughts back 5 years ago in 2015 when I first started this, and I was in a different mindset. I was in an environment where I just felt like I didn't fit in or I didn't have my voice heard because it was very structured in the way that they handled technology. And now I'm in an organization that is essentially a technology organization, and I see things a lot differently now. While I don't feel I'm where I need to be, I'm at a good place. I think professionally and even personally, I think I'm at a good place. I am planning my next iteration of myself, I should say, because every few years you have to kind of change and evolve, or else you will die. Right? If you don't change, you'll die. and not in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense, and where if I become stale in my technology, then I will not be able to progress further. I will not have longevity in my career, or et cetera, et cetera. So this is what this episode is going to be about. Just rehashing that season 1, episode 2, the IT career paths. I talked about how I actually got into IT and why I got into tech. And I talk about how the reason I got into tech is because I'm a big failure. And some of you would be like, whoa, what's going on here? Why are you calling yourself a failure? You have a job. Well, this wasn't my first career choice. My first career choice was to practice medicine, actually become a trauma room surgeon. That was my first career choice. That was my passion back then when I was a child. And I say when I was a child because I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew that was something that intrigued me, that piqued my interest. And the reason it piqued my interest, because if you think about a trauma room surgeon, there's typically nothing that comes through across their table that is similar, right? You're not going to be dealing with the same thing over and over and over again. There are going to be life-threatening injuries that you have to figure out how to save the person's life. Essentially, it was a big puzzle. It still is. It still is a big puzzle, and I really felt that was my calling in life. I've always been the person that has helped people. I do have a caring heart, even though those that know me, probably don't get to see that side of me, especially in the professional environment, because I've had to essentially harden that heart over time, because it's a rough world and you can't let people take advantage of you. So my failure turned into my second passion. I've always been passionate about technology, even as a young boy. In the 80s, I learned about computers from a friend's brother who had an Amiga system, and he would teach me about war dialing and connecting to various bulletin board systems back then, where you would get information. Bulletin board systems are the older, quote unquote, social media systems. If you think about Facebook and where you connect with other people, bulletin board systems were something like that, but not to the extent that they are today. Think about Reddit as a bulletin board system. I would say, Reddit would be as close to a bulletin board system as possible in this day and age, in where you would subscribe to a subreddit for like-minded folks. In a bulletin board system, there'd be a bulletin board system for gamers. There'd be a bulletin board system for hackers, or whatever topic that would interest you, I should say. And it wasn't easy to find those bulletin board systems. You needed to know somebody or find ways to get into them. They didn't make it easy, and that was the beauty back then. You could talk to early entrepreneurs or early technologists and how they had to figure things out as they went along. And fast forward to today, it's relatively easy to do things. I'm not saying it's easy to get into tech. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but from where we were, at least from my standpoint, in the 80s. And then if I talk to my father-in-law back in the 60s when he was studying computer science, that 20-year gap changes significantly. And even now, 40 years later, it's kind of exponentially changed. There are products out there where you don't have to write code and you can build elegant applications for businesses or even personally. So my failure turned into my career, where I was passionate for tech after learning about computers early on. And when I got to high school, we worked on the Apple IIe. I really just gravitated to it, and I picked it up very, very quickly, learning how to troubleshoot things, figuring things out along the way, teaching myself BASIC on the Commodore VIC-20, which is the poor man's Commodore 64. And if you've read anything about Elon Musk started out on a Commodore VIC-20, and look where he is now. So it really talks about the desire and the motivation and dedication that you want to put into your career path, or even into technology, to propel your career or your passion for technology into something else. Now, being a first generation American born citizen, I didn't have that motivation. I didn't have that mentorship that most people may be seeking. I didn't even know things existed at the time. All I knew when I was younger, that I wanted to move out to California because I wanted to work in the video game industry. And my mother still tells me that I wanted to work in the video game industry, even though I had aspirations of becoming a doctor. I always had a plan B, and that plan B was to become a video game developer. But I never really put the effort or had the resources to help drive me to that. I did have an opportunity to attend a specialized school in the town that I lived in. It was a technology, It was a high school called Science High, and they focused on the curriculum on mostly science and technology. You had to apply to it. I took the test to get into it. I did pass that test, but little did I know, a few months later, prior to the deadline to actually accept my placement at the school, my parents said we were moving. So my whole world would change. I would be moving to another school and meeting new friends and kind of figuring my way out. So it's one of those things where change really impacted my progression in pursuing a life in either technology or science, right? So even fast forward to college or university for those that are abroad, I did proceed to go down the path of taking pre-med classes, focusing my effort on taking and passing the MCATs, the medical college aptitude test. And I found myself doing that, but in parallel, teaching myself HTML, sitting in the computer lab all day on Saturday, learning about Linux at the time, right? Linux had just come out. This was 94, 95. Linux had just come out, and I was learning Linux and trying to figure out how to use it, and farting around most of the time at night. But during the day, just learning HTML. So much so that I kind of wonder, why didn't I progress even further into a software engineering profession? Because I was learning those early days, C++, even before I switched majors. So that's kind of where I found myself just really passionate about technology, losing my passion about medical school, losing my passion about actually helping people medically, because I just saw that as I progressed deeper down the rabbit hole of medicine, that it was becoming more of a business and not about taking care of people. So I said, if I'm going to go into a business, why don't I just go into business by becoming a technology professional? And this wasn't done over the course of one evening. This was done over the course of many months to a year or two, as I started doing volunteer work at hospitals in my local town during the summer, talking to different doctors. My mother used to work at a hospital in the accounts payable department. She knew doctors. She put me in touch with people that would give me insight and maybe guidance. And every single person that I talked to said, "Why do you want to do this? This is not a job where it's gratifying anymore. They're like, yeah, it's, you can help people, but it's not about that anymore. And they started talking to me about malpractice insurance. This was in the 90s, right? They started talking about malpractice insurance, how you're persuaded to use different pharmaceutical companies over the other one, even though you knew that didn't work, right? So it's just, it started to open my eyes on how the world really worked. So as I moved towards technology, I just saw myself rising faster, being able to make more money. I wound up dropping out of college at the time to pursue this career in technology. And that's kind of where I've been over the past 20 plus years. And it's really provided me a good, solid life. And it's been chaotic at the time. Yes. It continues to be chaotic. It continues to be stressful, especially now that I have a family and I need to maintain my longevity in the field of technology, which is the young person's game now, because I'm getting too costly for organizations. Unless I can prove my value to them, which I do every single day, it's an uphill battle. Because if you really think about it, what they pay me, they could probably pay 4 people to do. Now, will you get the quality of work? Not initially. It may take a year or 2, but that's a risk that businesses may want to take. So that was kind of my backstory. And I started asking the question of, well, why do you want to get into technology? What are some of the reasons why you want to get into technology? Do you have a similar story like I do? And where it comes to you naturally and you find it satisfying? Do you want to play with cool technology? Sure. I mean, most of us want to do that, but the reality is you may never get to do that. You don't have to work in technology to play with cool technology, especially nowadays. With cloud being a big player here, right? You can sign up for a cloud account for free, link a credit card to that and start playing around with whatever you want. Now, the key thing here is you have to control those costs, which is the big thing about cloud. But you could still play around with any technology that they have to offer. I have an account on Azure, on AWS, and on Google Cloud Platform, GCP, because I want to know what those services offer. Because at any point in time, my company may say, oh, we want to start using this. Do we have anybody that knows this? Right now, we're on AWS. We have some bits in Azure, and nobody has come to us and said, hey, we want to start using GCP, Google Cloud Platform. But I'm preparing myself for that. Because you always have to have that edge. And playing the technology, you have the ability to grab that edge. So playing with cool tech, it's so much easier now to do than it was before. There's so many resources out there for you. It's amazing. Let's say you want to help people, you want to help businesses. For the most part, you're going to be helping businesses, unless you work in the healthcare industry. Even in the healthcare industry, again, hospitals, large hospitals or healthcare organizations are a business. They're in it for money. So even though some of them are nonprofit, they still need to make money to pay the people, to expand their services, to keep their own technology up to date, even though most hospitals don't have up to date technology. But you're helping people. That's in the healthcare industry. In other industries, you're helping business. You're helping the business make money. And if you don't understand that, then you shouldn't be working for that organization. Your role there as a cost center, because you're not making money for the organization for the most part. And I'm not going to get into you as a software engineer building out a product or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. Most people in tech are there to support the business. So they're a cost center. And yes, you may argue, well, if it wasn't for me, they couldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z. That could be true, but they can also outsource you to a managed service provider, and some people have been. And you're just working for the managed service provider, which is a business. And in order to make that business money, you have to think like a salesperson. Because you're providing a service for an organization, you're providing a service that you're contracted for, so you want to make sure you provide that an expected level of service that's defined in the contract. You always want to go above and beyond because you want that organization to keep you under contract. And then you have to actually visualize, while most MSPs don't kind of really define this, you have to visualize that if an organization is having a problem with a technology that you don't manage, there may be an opportunity there for the MSP to come in and help that company, right? So it's helping the business that you're working for help the other business that you're contracted to make money. So all in all, you're just there to make money for the business. If you don't understand that, you need to figure that out sooner than later. It's not a right for you to work there, which I see a lot of people coming in now saying, well, no, they hired me. I expect this. And no, you need to show value for the organization. That's my whole thing with this show. Show value for the organization. That's the key thing here. Regardless of what technology you're working for, you're not entitled to get a paycheck. You have to show value for an organization, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a for-profit, whether it's an MSP, whether it's whatever. You have to show value, and how you show value, you need to figure that out. And again, listen to these episodes. Something may come in, and boom, something in your mind is gonna be like, oh, there you go. This is what I can do. And then lastly, you come into technology because you want to make money because there's no other money out there to make. I'm reading now that first year college grads that in software engineering in Google make as much money as I do. And I've been working at this 20 years. And then in 3 years, they'll double that money. Maybe 3 to 5 years, they'll double that money into the $300,000, $400,000 range. Now, granted, those are in the large metropolitan areas, but still. Now with everything being remote, I mean, it's mind-numbing. There's still money in tech. It's not as easy as it was previously, but there's still money in tech. So you're gonna come to technology to make money. And there may be other reasons why you come into technology, but those are really those three that I've focused on back 5 years ago, and I think still ring true today. You want to play with cool tech. You want to learn some new things. You want to help people, help businesses. And you want to make money, plain and simple. That's why people get into tech now. I even see it on Reddit. People, tripling their salary because they used to work as an accountant or something like that. Because they moved into tech and they got a certification here or there, and boom. It's a no-brainer. Now, for those of you across the world, I don't know the local economies there, but I know that even working in tech still makes some decent amount of money for your economy. Now, I talked about this last time. Those in India are seeing a great decline of technology workers because unfortunately you become too expensive for companies. So they have to go out looking elsewhere. And I talked about the Philippines seeing an explosive growth that India saw back in the 90s. So what does India have to do now? They have to, rebrand themselves. We are now specialized in certain things. And that specialization, I think, is going to see a rise in India, especially with the cloud and AI and ML. Machine learning, right? I think security, not so much. Even though I think you'd like to see that, no, I don't believe so. But the cloud services, I think, are going to be big in India. As soon as somebody over there can figure it out and how to brand themselves as no longer call center folks or level 1, level 2 tech support, kind of really specialized niche fields or specializations. I think somebody will figure that out very quickly. Start training the workforce out there, and you'll see that rise again in the workforce. So, getting into tech is a hell of a lot easier than it has been previously. So I talked about 5 years ago that back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, if you knew how to turn on a printer, you were the tech guy, you were the IT person. But now, and look, I say that it's easier to get into, meaning you can improve your skills or learn different skills very easily now than you could before, because everything was very much closed off. If you want to learn Microsoft Exchange, you had to know somebody that can get you the software to do that. Now Microsoft's giving you 180 days to fool around with things, or you can sign up an Office 365 account and play with that. I mean, it's expensive, but $280 a year is what I pay for, and I can get E3 access, which is what most organizations have anyway. And then if you go pay as you go, you can do many other things. So it's a lot easier now to skill up than it was previously. And I've talked about this before. And if, $280 is a lot of money, I get it. But you can cut back on certain things. And that $280, again, this is for the year, is very, very much attainable. If you make $10 an hour, you can save up and get $280. So it's easier now than it has in the past to get into the tech industry. There's a lot of free training. There's also low-cost training. There's community-based training. I know I'm on a Telegram group where they send out quizzes every day for CISSP or security-based quizzes, so you can kind of keep your skills, not skills, but keep your knowledge fresh. It's almost like pop quizzes that come up. And if you get it wrong, they give you a link on what to read up on it. So it's one of those things that there are a lot of resources out there for you to learn things. There are a lot of open source projects that you can join to learn things. Again, continuously learning. And then that's kind of one of my other episodes. But it's it's something where you have to do. So getting into tech's a lot easier. You can use the cloud as your playground. Most Windows machines, if you upgrade to Pro, you can get Hyper-V Manager. OpenBox, VirtualBox is still available. With the advent of increased storage and decreasing the price, you can build a bunch of VMs, store them on an external USB drive, turn them on when you need it. I know I have FreeBSD installation, Kali Linux, Red Hat, CentOS, and Ubuntu. Windows Server 2019 as well. Don't ask me where I got that one. But there's a lot of resources now available for you to skill up or figure out where you want to get in and learn. Not only learning in terms of technical learning, but I talked about community-based learning. Reddit is a big one, right? You can use Reddit. There's IT career questions. There's a subreddit for nearly every vendor out there. There's a subreddit for nearly every certification out there. You can join those subreddits and participate. If you want to become a software engineer, there's definitely a subreddit for that. You can there's subreddits for various languages that are out there. There's open source projects that you can join to get your foot in the door. That's a big one. And I think I said this 5 years ago, and I'll say it today. If you can get onto an open source project that's getting noticed, that's getting some traction, that has some positive movement, and you start announcing that you're working on that project via your social media accounts, whether it be Twitter, LinkedIn, what's the other one? Not Facebook, but even Instagram, Snapchat as well. You can, and YouTube, set up your online presence. So here's my thing with that. If you already have an online presence and you've been farting around and stuff like that, create a new one. And associate all your professional sites with that new one. and don't put stupid stuff on there. Right? Don't even link back to your old one. I would even change your name on your old one. So in case you did something stupid and somebody goes to the Wayback Machine looking for you, they'll kind of find out if you're a knucklehead and you talk negatively about your prime minister or your president, or you said something racist, or you supported something that was stupid. Fix that. Delete your account even. I would just delete the account. Just get rid of it. Create a brand new one. Chuck, I have 10,000 followers. Who cares? Somebody's bound to rat you out. Get rid of it. Start brand new. Start fresh. I've been busted a couple of times at my previous job for saying something that I thought was very innocent, but it turns out led to some security concerns. Let's put it that way. I still don't agree with it, but whatever. It's neither here nor there. So start a new account, new social media presence, and start broadcasting yourself. Twitch as well. Yeah, I forgot about Twitch. Use Twitch. Twitch is a good one. A lot of younger people on there that, while it's mainly geared towards video games, you can definitely leverage it for broadcasting your skills. There was another project because, again, it's all about getting your foot in the door and trying to getting into tech, right? And the different career paths, which I'll get into. But there's another project that I think you all should start looking into. It's called the Cloud Resume Challenge. And this gentleman by the name of, what the hell is his name? Forrest Brazil, something like that. It's forrestbrazil.com. FORRESTBRAZEAL. Back in April of this year, he put out the Cloud Resume Challenge. There were a lot of people that were looking to get into open source projects or cloud projects to get their feet wet into the cloud. And he said, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to need to get the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification. You need to create a resume in HTML, not Word or PDF. Your resume needs to have be styled with CSS. It should be hosted on Amazon S3 static website. You should have CloudFront in front of it. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just keep listening. You could have a custom DNS name pointing to CloudFront. Your webpage should include a visitor count. Remember those visitor counts? That was funny back in the 90s. Everybody had a visitor count. But this gentleman says we should have visitor count with JavaScript. Your visitor count needs to retrieve and update data in DynamoDB. He has a link for a free course on DynamoDB. Says don't communicate directly through DynamoDB. Use APIs instead. Talks about doing things with Python. Again, API resources, serverless code, GitHub for CI/CD pipelines. Talks about creating a GitHub repository, and then linking to a blog post that you may have. So there's literally like 14 things to do that'll probably take you about a month to get through if you're starting out brand new. Obviously, if you have some experience, then it may take you a little bit faster. But there's your challenge, the resume challenge, forrestbrazil.com, and just search the Cloud Resume Challenge. And it'll start getting you thinking about what you want to do in tech. So let's talk about the paths, right? So there are a bunch of different paths. I talked about them before. Not much has changed in terms of what's available out there from your frontline help desk. And I think last season I went into depth on some of these. I'm not going to go into depth here. I'm just going to talk very much high level. The first one that most people start off with is, everybody say it, the help desk. Everybody does a help desk or call center, the frontline support of any organization in where somebody calls in and says, hey, I have a problem with this. Please help me. And you have 1 to 3 minutes to either help them. If not, pass them off to the next line. The next line can be a technical support analyst. Depends on the organization, right? You can do technical support analyst, which is your all-encompassing analyst that has general knowledge on a number of different technologies, most notably the technologies that are on your workstation, whether it be a laptop or a desktop. They will be there to help with any computer peripherals issues that you have. If you're in the office, obviously, if you're remote, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But they will know things like the Office product, the G Suite product, how to connect to the organization remotely. These are the folks that kind of stay on the phone with you a little bit longer, communicate with you either on the phone or via email to kind of solve your problem, to get you to working again, to get you to be productive. That's what the technical support analyst does. Some of these folks are also called desktop analysts. Same concept in where they're there to help you. They're going to be on with you for a little bit longer, and kind of sort things out. The other step after that, technical support analyst, desktop analyst, kind of going down that path is the desktop engineer, a little bit more specialized worker that's focused on building workstations, whether they be physical or virtual, for you to use for your everyday job. They'll create software packages for you to do for the organization, as I said, deploy to the workers and things like that. Network engineering. Obviously, they'll be focused on the core network, connectivity services. Sometimes they'll include telecom. Sometimes they'll include the audiovisual components of an organization. Then you'll have, and these are all really support line folks at this point, right? So I haven't even gotten into software engineering, stuff like that. These are all really support line folks. The kind of the core of any businesses are these technology support line folks. And so that's why I always like to start off that way, because it really helps you understand the business as a whole. Because you'll start seeing things that come in that don't make sense to you. Why is this way? And how can you improve that? Again, trying to add value to yourself for that organization. Most people don't spend their careers at the help desk. Most people do. Some people do. Most people don't. Most people don't spend their career as a technical support analyst or desktop support analyst, whatever you call them. They move up. Some people do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but most people do find themselves moving up and out of that. So we talked about desktop engineering, network engineering, the core network services, sometimes telephony, sometimes audio video. The telecom folks may be separate from network engineering, depending on their organization. Larger organizations may have a line of delineation saying, oh, no, this is network and this is telecom. But with IP services kind of merging into one, you'll find most larger organizations have that all under network services. Then you'll have messaging services, probably next one, folks that deal with messaging, mobile messaging, the management of those mobile devices. And it all depends on the organization, right? So I'm just kind of, again, giving you high level support here. What else is out there? Audio video may be a separate area of focus at some organizations, because it does take a lot, meaning that you'll be setting up conference rooms. You may see them as audio video conferencing services, where you'll be focused on building out conference rooms for organizations, ensuring that the functionality of those services work, ensuring that the video and audio quality meets or exceeds the expectations of senior management, senior leadership. Right, so you may see that broken out. Database middleware services, so the middleware platform. Now we're going away from the kind of frontline support to more application support here. So database middleware, focusing on it, obviously the middleware component between an application and a back end. Going back down one level, storage. Storage is a big one. I can't believe I forgot that. Storage, virtualization, data center. Those are still all frontline support folks. And within those, you'll have project managers within those organizations, or I should say within those towers. So the virtualization tower, which includes possibly the OS tower, because obviously you can't have one without the other unless you're doing hardware. The storage, again, it's grown immensely, and it continues to grow, and it continues to be a challenge for most organizations because they just think storage is storage. Who cares? But storage plays a unique role because you have to understand what your application is doing, the I/O that it's going to provide on the back end. So that's that. So going back up to database middleware, you'll have your application support team. So the teams that support the business applications. You will have your DevOps team. So the team that is releasing the code for those various applications. And there are a bunch of teams in there. And again, it all depends on the organization, but those kind of three really hit the kind of the majority of many, was it 3 or 4, right? So app support, DevOps, database middleware. Those three teams really focus on the core applications for an organization. And then you go into software engineering. And then software engineering has a bunch of different paths that you can take from there. Whether it's specific languages or the like. So it's very vast and very wide. Software engineering is one of those areas where you have to really understand the software development lifecycle. Obviously, if you're entry level or junior level, let's say, you're going to be just writing code, kind of code snippets for various applications. You may be focused on APIs. You may be focused on whatever, right? Some sort of function. But it is a good platform or starting point to get into the more in-depth, and then you'll have some project managers in there. And the project manager role really is prevalent throughout the organization. You may have some organizations that have a full-blown project management organization all within itself, and where they kind of dole out project managers to different projects or different towers, and they govern that project manager. So that's kind of a role that while you will not be hands-on technically, you will have you may have to have some ability or capabilities within the technology space. Then you have the security side of the house, which is a whole nother branch. You have your SOC, your Security Operations Center. Then you have your various red teams, blue teams, your risk teams. It just goes on and on the security space, and it's mind-numbing how quickly it's grown into the various nuances that you have. Your intrusion detection team, your firewall teams, which used to be part of the network connectivity services team, but now it's part of security. Your proxy teams. And the like, right? There are so many. The PKI environment, your identity and access management team is now under security. What else? There's so many things that are out there that the security space is ever growing. Now, here's the deal with security. Most people are going to say, "Oh, get the CISSP. You'll kind of propel yourself into a very high-paying job," but you need experience. Even if you look at the CISSP, it'll say you need experience before you get this certification. So don't feel like you can just get that certification and jump right into a job. It doesn't work like that. With security, you need experience. And the challenges that we're facing in the security space is that most folks feel like that they have enough experience just doing what they're doing on their own to kind of get the job done, but they're not. They're learning as they're going because each organization is different. Each organization has their own requirements as to meet certain standards based on, government regulations and the like. So you can't just think that you walk into a security team and you can know everything. You can't. There's so much to learn. But if you want to get into that space, the Security Operations Center is probably the first place to start. And I'm one for progressing, right? Don't jump into a software engineer position because you know how to code in Ruby, right? Start somewhere else. Start an application support team. Then you'll understand the needs of an application and how you can better develop that application. And that's kind of the way I see it, but everybody's different. Everybody always wants to jump in at the high end and start making $200,000 a base salary. Yeah, there are people doing that, but they have no lives. So it really is up to you. So those are all really technical positions. The non-technical positions in the technology space, I talked about the project managers, the business analysts, those that take business requirements and translate them to technical requirements for the most part. That's kind of two areas where I see. If you're not into tech, but you want to get into tech, is a way to kind of get in there. I've seen people start off as a project manager and then find their way into other areas of technology that has benefited them. So it's one of those things. Technology is so vast and so diverse in terms of opportunities out there that you just have to go in there, figure out what you want to do, and you'll find yourself 5 years later or maybe even a year later doing something completely different than what you set out to do. And that's what technology allows you to do, allows you to kind of reinvent yourself at any point in time that you feel like you want to put the time into it. So that's kind of really the rehash of season 1, episode 1 in the I-tier career path progression. It hasn't changed much in terms of the path. It just has changed in terms of how you get into it. I talked about a lot more resources available for you to learn, to get skilled up before you try to attempt it. You can ask questions on Reddit. There are so many subreddits that you can jump into. But again, with everything, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, understand where people are coming from, really drive your own career path. And listen to last season. I talked in depth about some of these things, some of these careers, and what they do on a daily basis. Cause that's always been a question. Well, what do you do on a daily basis? I got to break that down, into that. And don't use this episode as gospel as this is all that's out there. Then no, there's plenty more out there, right? There's game development, right? That's a technology career. There's also virtual reality, augmented reality development that's being leveraged in medicine. It's being leveraged in the manufacturing industry, the Internet of Things, engineering, right? So building devices that can monitor different manufacturing processes, right? And things like that. So, and even in medicine as well, the Internet of Things is very useful. So don't feel like what I've said is gospel. It's just me kind of regurgitating what I said from season 1, and kind of taking a different approach to it in terms of how you are able to get into those fields. Look at LinkedIn. Look at the job markets on LinkedIn and see what's out there for something that you want to do. The other one, Flex Jobs. Flex Jobs is another one. Obviously, unfortunately, it's a paid site. But if you want to spend the money and get a subscription to Flex Jobs, you can see what's out there, and see what people are looking for. Dice is still one that I go to. Obviously, Glassdoor, Indeed is the other big one. But go on those sites, look for a term that you want to get hired for, and see what the requirements are. and start jotting them down. Oh, I need to learn this. Oh, I need to learn this. I need to understand this. What is this? Some things you may not know because it's it's specific to that industry. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. You're not going to know everything, and don't expect to know everything. And I've read many accounts in where men will apply to positions if they have at least 40% of the requirements down, and women, I think, will apply to a position if they have 80%. Don't do that. Just apply to the position that you think you can get into. You can kind of talk to. A lot of it is about selling yourself. So if you've seen maybe one or two things that you know you're confident about, and you can talk about the other things, go ahead and apply. It doesn't hurt to apply. You're going to get no's. So what? My motto has always been apply to everything that you feel confident that you can speak to if you get an interview. And then when you get into that interview, study up to make sure you don't look like a fool. And see what happens. I would always, I always was taught that you should actually go on a job interview maybe once or twice a year to keep your job interview skills sharp. But the hardest part about that is actually getting the interview. So catering your resume to the job description is key. And I'll talk about recruiters and the job process, the job hiring process, and an interview process in another episode. But just keep that in mind, right? When you're looking for jobs, you have to cater that resume now to the job description. So a lot of different things I said in here, a lot of things to kind of ponder about where you want to go, why you actually want to get into this industry in working with tech. We all can't work for the Facebooks, Netflix, Apples, Googles, right? We all can't do that. So it's you're going to have to find your way and figure out what you want to do. And that's really key. Start writing things down, start jotting kind of like what are they called? Dream boards, right? Just try to put things down together. I use Moleskine Flow on my iPad to jot things down. There's OneNote as well. There's a bunch of different apps that you can use. So just start writing it down. Start figuring out what you want to do. Start finding out what your next move is, and see where you want to do it. Go to that cloud resume challenge. I'm actually going to do that as well. And I may post my final result. Actually, I will post my final result once I'm done. But I think it's a really interesting challenge, especially for those that are starting out. Now, I've done most of that except with the API stuff, but I'm actually very interested in APIs at this point in time in my life. I think it's an area where I want to focus on some more because I'm seeing extreme growth in that. It makes more sense to leverage APIs instead of making calls directly. So that's kind of what intrigued me about this specifically. But check it out, the Cloud Resume Challenge. It'll kind of force you to actually do something, and once you complete it, then you feel accomplished. Recently, I participated in the AWS Deep Racer Challenge at work, and I felt like it was very much fulfilling to work with someone on a project like this, something totally new to the both of us. And I think based on both of our inputs between the different functions that we created, we came 33rd out of 100, or maybe 31st out of 100, which is not bad for folks competing against software engineers within an organization. So when we were listening at the final challenge, the final race, one of the guys from one of the teams from France, they built their own tool set, and they said, "Oh, if you want to use our tool set, it's on GitHub. Pull it down, and you can actually see how we came up with this function and what we used, and how we analyzed our function and analyzed our time trials and our simulations." I'm like, "Holy cow! These guys are hardcore, and here we are competing with them, and we came in 31st." So I thought that was pretty good for first timers. We're going to definitely do it again, but with everything else, with life and work, sometimes we don't have the opportunity to do these things. But I know I said a lot. take it all in, listen back again, go back to season 1. I went in probably a little bit more in depth. Go to season 6. There's definitely episodes in there that dig deeper into some of those jobs that I talked about previously. But again, this show is not meant to be listened to in sequence. Go out of sequence, go back in time, go forward in time, wherever you want to go. Enjoy at the ITXP on Twitter, the_IT_XP on Instagram. Although I don't post very much, when I do, it's there. I'm on YouTube, the ITXP, Spotify, wherever you can get these podcasts, I'm there. And I will talk to you later. Take care.